Asvapati is in the kingdoms of the little life. Sri Aurobindo is introducing us to those kingdoms. We finished the first section, and now we've moved on to the second. It tells us that in order to find out what has gone wrong with life, pure and bright from the timeless was her birth, and endless bliss is her eternal home. So why is life the way that we see it? The way that we experience it? So unsatisfactory, so full of stress and suffering and unpredictability. So in order to find out how that could happen, King Asvapati has to descend down to the roots, to the very beginnings of life. So I'm actually going to read from the break, from line 111 onwards. In this slow ascension, he must follow her pace, even from her faint and dim subconscious start. So only can earth's last salvation come. For so only could he know the obscure cause of all that holds us back and baffles God in the jail delivery of the imprisoned soul. Along swift paths of fall, through dangerous gates, he chanced into a grey obscurity, teeming with instincts from the mindless gulfs that pushed to wear a form and win a place. Life here was intimate with death and night, and ate death's food that she might breathe a while. She was their inmate and adopted waif, accepting subconscience, in dumb darkness reign a sojourner. She hoped not any more. There, far away from truth and luminous thought, he saw the original seat, the separate birth of the dethroned, deformed, and suffering power. An unhappy face of falsity made true, a contradiction of our divine birth, indifferent to beauty and to light. Parading, she flaunted her animal disgrace, unhelped by camouflage, brutal and bare, an authentic image recognized and signed of her outcast force, exiled from heaven and hope, fallen, glorying in the vileness of her state, the grovel of a strength once half divine, the graceless squalor of her beast desires, the staring visage of her ignorance, the naked body of her poverty. Here first she crawled out from her cabin of mud, where she had lain, inconscient, rigid, mute. Its narrowness and torpor held her still. A darkness clung to her, uneffaced by light. There neared no touch redeeming from above. The upward look was alien to her sight. Forgotten the fearless Godhead of her walk. Renounced was the glory and felicity, the adventure in the dangerous fields of time. Hardly she availed, wallowing, to bear and live.
What does she refer to?
This is life. Here we're at the beginning of this Canto 4, the Kingdoms of the Little Life. The previous canto was called, it was Canto 3, the Glory and the Fall of Life. No? And there we saw King Asvapati. He'd seen the world stair. He'd started to climb up it and entered into the kingdom of subtle matter. We read about that. And then Sri Aurobindo told us that it seems a very beautiful place. It's an important one for us because all the templates, the patterns for what happens here are found there. But still, it's a very limited world. It's a world like our own that's limited by form. Although there the forms are subtle, while here they're gross forms. So it was too narrow in every way for Asvapati's great soul, which was longing for infinity, and to find the key that could change life here from its present aspect into divine life. So he moves on, and the next realm that he enters, it is the life world. And in the first section, there's a wonderful description, a kind of symbolic picture of the life that we know, full of uncertainty and extremes, life going for one extreme and then the other, enjoying suffering, enjoying all kinds of things. And at the very end of the canto, he tells us beautiful lines. About life. Chance she has chosen. I'm reading on page 118. Chance she has chosen, and danger for playfellows. Fate's dreadful swing she has taken for cradle and seat. Yet pure and bright from the timeless was her birth. A lost world rapture lingers in her eyes. Her moods are faces of the infinite. Beauty and happiness are her native right, and endless bliss is her eternal home. That is the true origin and nature of life. And Asvapati is able to see something of those divine worlds of griefless life. So how has that become the life that we know? And in the last canto, section of Canto 3, there's this description of how in the very beginning of things, when there was only a material world of sea and sky and stone, the divine beings who were incarnated within that material world, they were not satisfied at all. They needed so much more possibilities in order to be able to express themselves and to grow. And so there was this strong aspiration calling to the goddess of life to come down into the material world. And she did descend, and she brought with her all her gifts. She wanted to fill a fair new world with joy.
Those divine beings were in...
Sorry?
Divine beings that you said.
Yes.
They were in which form? It is mentioned in which...
They weren't in a form at all. They were somehow incarnated in the material forms of our world. They were inhabiting. I've mentioned it before, but you would hear it for the first time, that there's one of Mother's disciples, very well-known disciple, Uda Pinto. He's with us no more. But he once told the Mother he'd had an experience that long, long back in the past, he was just a pebble lying on the beach. And Mother and Sri Aurobindo were also pebbles lying on the beach, and they were very close together. And Mother told him, yes, that's true. So the souls who had descended from the origin in order to start this evolutionary process on the earth, in this unique creation, in those days they had no other forms, only material forms. And what can you do when you're just a pebble? It's very limited, the possibilities. So within them they felt all these higher possibilities, and they were calling for that. And the goddess of life, the principle of life, agreed, and down she came with all her gifts. And there's a beautiful description about the result of that, you know. The earth became alive with plants and trees and animals and human beings. But something went wrong on the way. While her gifts were on the way, before they could reach our hearts, he says, a dark, ambiguous presence questioned all. Now I'm reading on page 130. It says, my way of understanding it is that the life principle came down unto the earth, but the first thing that happened was she was just swallowed up in the unconsciousness and inertia of matter. Apparently this happens with all these major descents. When the supramental descended in 1956, Mother later told Huta that how she had seen all this golden force and light pouring down on the earth, and during the meditation, and when she opened her eyes, she expected to see everybody flat on the playground, but nobody was aware of anything. And in fact, all that golden force and light had been swallowed up in matter. She said, dark blue waves of inconscience. But she said, it's here. Now it's on earth. This is not an ordinary descent. This is a new manifestation, and it's involved in matter, and it will gradually emerge. So that is what has happened also, Sri Aurobindo seems to say, with life. There was a time when the life principle descended, but then he will describe to us in these next sections how difficult it was for that principle of life to emerge from this grip of unconsciousness and matter. And that's what we are reading about at present. So here in this section, which we read just now.
So from that fall, everything was constrained and came into darkness. This little light started arising. It's like that?
Sorry, the little life started arising. Yes. Actually, in the sections of this canto, he'll describe the steps. But first of all, he gives this kind of general introduction. What happened, how it got completely swallowed up. And he says the life goddess, she has to lodge in the house of death and night. And she's just like a lost child, fumbling through fog in search of paradise. So Aswapati wants to see how could all that have happened. No? And in order to do that, he has to go down to the very roots. So this next section, the section which I read just now, it's like a kind of introductory description of what will happen in the following cantos, and particularly in cantos 7 and 8, when Aswapati realizes that he can't reach the divine life by going upwards. He has to go down. So there's the descent into the night, and then at the very bottom of the descent, this dreadful world of falsehood. No? But it's there, at the very bottom of that world, that he finds the secret key to nature's change. And then for him, that's a complete transformation. Suddenly, he doesn't have to do anything. It's as if he's just in paradise. Everything has completely transformed. But that's a transformation for him personally. It's not yet that transformation he wants to bring to the whole world. In order to achieve that, he has much, much further to go, all the way to the end of Book 3, when finally the mother... Well, first of all, she tells him, look, don't ask me. It's not the time. Human beings are not ready. What you are asking for, a divine life on earth. Impossible. Don't ask me. So then he tells her, but mother, it's all taking so long. It's so difficult. I know it's not going to fail. I've seen in my vision the future world. But won't you send a part of yourself to the earth to help us, to speed things up? And she says, yes, one shall descend and change the iron law. So that's the end of Aswapati's journey. Then he returns to earth, and then we start in Book 4 with the birth of Savitri. So it's Aswapati's quest. He does so much. It's the whole first half of the poem. But his quest is not fulfilled. It just gets passed on to Savitri. And what he has been longing for, she has to work it out in the second half of the book. And that boon is granted by the Supreme only in Book 11. Only then she can return to earth, carrying with her the living soul of Shraddhavan. So what we read just now and what we'll look at now, it's like an introduction, a summary of what Aswapati will have to do in cantos 7 and 8. So you start, Bhavana.
116 or 23?
At line 111, at the break. Yeah.
In this slow ascension, he must follow her pace, even from her effaced and dim subconscious star. So only can earth's last salvation come. For so only could he know the obscure cause of all that holds us back and baffles God in the daily delivery of the imprisoned soul.
So this slow ascension, it means the slow ascension of life, fumbling through fog in search of paradise. Asvapati has to follow the steps of life as she emerges from that faint and dim subconscious start. That is the only way that the final salvation, complete salvation of the earth can come about. Because that's the only way that he could learn, he could know the cause, that obscure cause. How, in what strange way has this change come about? No? All this that holds us back. We know how difficult it is to make spiritual progress. No? We experience that every day. What is it that's holding us back? And what is preventing God from just letting us out of prison? He says, no, it baffles God. There's something preventing God from setting us free. A jail delivery, it makes us think of, people escaping from prison. There are interesting films about that, how they do it, and what help they need and how can they get delivered out of that imprisonment. So there, God is our Savior, and he wants to get us out of this imprisonment of ignorance and inertia and falsehood. But something is baffling him, and Asvapati wants to know what it is. Joel.
A long, swift path of fall through dangerous gates, he chants into a great obscurity, teeming with instincts from the mindless gulfs that pushed to wear a form and win a place.
So he's going down. And we've always heard, that the downward path towards hell is very easy. Nothing stops you. You can fall very easily down. Going up is much more difficult. Swift paths of fall through dangerous gates. There's one stage after another that you pass through on the way down. Asvapati makes that journey, and he comes into this grey realm full of shadows, this grey obscurity, which is teeming with instincts from the subconscious gulfs. Teeming is what ants and termites do, wimmling about, hundreds and thousands, uncountable numbers of them. But these are not ants, these are instincts, life movements. Instinct is a kind of knowledge, but it's that very, very unconscious knowledge. It's not conscious awareness, which we have to aim for on the higher levels. Those little things are just doing what they do, teeming with instincts from the mindless gulfs, the deep realms where there is no mind consciousness. And what they're doing is all of them want to have a proper form and a place in the manifestation. That's what they're pushing for. They want to find expression in our world. Yamuna. You haven't got a book? Haven't got glasses? Okay. Nidish.
Life here was intimate with death and night, and ate death's food that she might breathe a while. She was their inmate and adopted waif. Accepting subconscience in dumb darkness reigned, the sojourner she hoped not anymore.
Yes. So in that realm, that grey obscurity which he gets into, life, there she's very close to death and night, unconsciousness. And in order to survive, she has to eat death's food, this physical food, material food. The reason why death exists is because of the nature of matter, of physical substance, which is not flexible enough to be able to express higher consciousness. So, that first manifestation of life, it just has to eat whatever material food is available in order to live, in order to be able to breathe for a short time. So, death and night, it's as if they are foster parents. No? She lives in their house and eats their food. She was their inmate. She's living in the house of death. She's their adopted waif. A waif is a lost child. Death and night have adopted her. So, because she's living in their house and eating their food, she has to accept this state of subconscious. Not complete unconsciousness, but something below the level of awareness. She's a sojourner. She's somebody who has to stay for some time in this reign, this realm of dumb darkness. This darkness with no possibility of self-expression. So it's as if that wonderful, powerful, great, just wide-winged goddess, she has lost all hope. She's just been swallowed up into the darkness and inertia of matter. Tana.
They were far away from truth and oneness of thought. He sought the virginal seed, the separate birth of the dethroned, deformed, and suffering power. An unhappy phase of falsity made true, a contradiction of our divine birth, indifferent to beauty and to light. Paranoid, she flaunted her animal disgrace, unhelped by camouflage, brutal and bad. An authentic image, recognized and signed, of her outcast foes, exiled from heaven and earth, fallen, glorying in the violence of her state, the grovel of her strength, once half divine, the graceless squalor of her beast desires, the staring visage of her ignorance, the naked body of her fallen.
So this is what Aswapati will see in Canto 8. The mother of evil, the sons of darkness, the realm of falsehood. Far away from truth and luminous thought, when he penetrates all the way down there. That's what Aswapati saw. The source, that's what he was looking for, the original seat, the separate birth. The thing about this manifestation is the oneness, but it's the oneness expressed in multiplicity and variety and difference. No? So this falsehood, this mother of evil, how has this separate birth come about? He says she's a dethroned, deformed, and suffering power. It's a terrible distorted expression of that pure and bright birth of life, her origin. It's just the opposite extreme. Dethroned. It means she's been thrown off her throne, where the queen, where the goddess should sit. She's been dethroned, cast down. She's been deformed. All her beauty has turned into ugliness. And because of that, she's suffering. Can't help but be suffering. Endless bliss is her native home, but now she's turned into suffering. So what he sees is this unhappy face of falsity, falsehood, made true, made real, palpable, right there before him. No? A contradiction of our divine birth. We are not meant to be like that. Just the very opposite. But there she is. That's the lowest level of life. Indifferent to beauty and to light. Doesn't care about that. She's just showing off, parading. She flaunted, means showing off her animal disgrace. She's not a goddess anymore. Unhelped by camouflage. There's no covering to it. Brutal and bare, this appearance of deformation, and just the very opposite. What he sees, it's an authentic image, recognized and signed. It's even as if she signed her photograph. This is me, in all this ugliness and perversion of her outcast force, her outcast force, which has been exiled, lost from heaven and hope. Now in the world there are so many exiles who've had to leave their homes. No? Oh, the life goddess is like that. She's been exiled from her heavenly native home. Now there she is at the very bottom of things. Fallen. She knows she's fallen. She's even glorying, boasting in the vileness, the ugliness and falsehood of her state. The groveling is when you're just crawling in the mud, no? That strength of hers was once half divine, even more than half divine. Now, what a state she's in. Graceless squalor, disgraceful squalor, everything that's mean and ugly and poor and muddy, disgusting of her beast desires, the cravings of a degraded animal. And with it the staring visage of her ignorance. Sometimes we see, I remember once seeing a face like that, where all the consciousness had been taken away. What a terrible thing it is to see a face like that. The blank eyes, no expression. The naked body of her poverty. She has nothing to cover herself with at all. It's just the most degraded state one can be in. Kamala, will you read?
Here, first she crawled out from her cabin of mud, where she had lain inconscient, rigid mute. Its narrowness and torpor held her still. The darkness plunged to her uneffaced by light.
Yes. So in this state, this lowest level, this is where life has emerged for the first time from her cabin of mud, her narrow little house made out of earth. And she's just emerging from matter. There she had been completely inconscient, without consciousness. She hadn't been able to move, couldn't utter a sound, mute. No? And the narrowness and the torpor, the inertia of that original state is still holding her. She's still surrounded by a darkness. There's no light for her yet. Sarojini.
There neared not towards redeeming harm ever. In the upward loop was a line to her side, forgetting the fearless Godhead of her one. Renounced was the glory and felicity. The adventure in the dangerous fields of time, hardly see a veiled
Wallowing.
To bear and
live. So there she is, just emerging from the mud. And he sees that there's no divine touch to help her, no redeeming touch coming from above to help her to become free. And she herself, she doesn't know how to look up. The upward look was alien, strange to her sight. It's not used to that. She's completely forgotten the great goddess that she used to be, the fearless Godhead of her walk, where she could stride. He described her striding across the worlds, demanding heaven for robe and the seas. All that glory and bliss, which is her true nature, has been renounced, lost. The adventure in the dangerous fields of time. Perhaps all of us have come here because we've been attracted by this adventure in the dangerous fields of time, where anything could happen. No? And in Book 6, Canto 2, Narad says something like that. He says, don't complain, you chose it. You saw from above the possibilities of entering into time and what it would mean. And you did it, you accepted, you chose that adventure in the dangerous fields of time. So now there's nothing like that, no dangerous adventure, no adventure of any kind. She can hardly live, avail, it's to manage. She could hardly manage to bear, to endure this state. It's so unhappy, impossible. How can she go on living? There she is wallowing in the mud like a pig, enjoying the degradation of the dirt.
But this has happened knowingly.
Well, in this case with the life goddess, she hasn't chosen this. I don't think so. What she chose was she answered that prayer of the God, the divine beings within matter, and she wanted to fill a whole fair new world with joy and beauty, all her possibilities. Something happened on the way. Of course, there are different ways of talking about this thing that has happened. Mother has told the story several times in different ways to different people about how when this manifestation was started, there were 4 emanations of the Supreme Mother who were sent to do this manifestation. There was consciousness, light. There was bliss. There was truth. And there was life. And she says it's a story, don't take it too literally, but it's a way to help us understand something that happened. They felt so powerful that they cut connection with their divine origin. And as soon as they did that, they turned into their opposites. So bliss became suffering. Truth became falsehood. Perhaps we can say that's the origin of this mother of falsehood. Life became death. Consciousness became unconsciousness. So everything something had to be sent, new powers had to be sent to enable all this to begin to evolve, to turn back to its divine origin.
Many times it is difficult to connect what he wants to say. It's very difficult to understand the connection between the cantos and even within the cantos. It's difficult to...
Yes. You see here we've got breaks, no?
Yeah.
So each of these is like a kind of scene in a drama or a film. This tells something. Then there's another one. It tells another part of the story. And then here he said, hardly she availed wallowing to bear and live. This absolutely degraded state of life, helpless. And then he describes that state in more detail, what it is like, what it must have been like on our earth long, long ago, when life was just emerging for the first time. If some visitor from outer space had come then and had seen these simple single-celled creatures and these slimes and molds and all that, then he would think, well, not much hope for this planet, you know? Nothing seemed worth the labor to become, all that effort to be something, just to go on existing, so difficult. Why? But Sri Aurobindo says, Aswapati doesn't see it like that. He sees that this was a necessary stage in this emergence. This is the beginning of something else. So, what is it? What are these little creatures? Aswapati is able to perceive in all that disgusting littleness the beginnings of a great symphony of life. So that's we can say the very, very first stage in the emergence of physical life. And the next stage in the next section is the animal creation, which is more conscious, more diverse, very interesting. And it extends from the whole range, from those little single-celled creatures up to beings who look like human beings, but they don't yet have a human consciousness. And he describes them. And when we read that description, we think, yes, we've heard about all that in the early primitive stage of human life. And then the third stage, and with each of these cantos, the realms of life, the realms of mind, very often we see these three stages. We can say the most physical stage, the vital stage, and the mental stage. So when the mental stage comes in the animal world, there's a description of this first emergence of mind. Just to a very few little creatures, something comes.
So in sequence, according to this process of evolution, in the future humanity would be different even in terms of biology.
Yes.
There might be times when this human system would not need material food, it would not need the speech as a means of communication.
Right. Yes. Where our substance, our whole substance, would be something different from what it is now. Because at the moment, this substance wears out. You don't feel it yet, but we older people, we feel it, how it's wearing out. And so the soul within is growing through the experience of each birth. But there comes a time when it thinks, well, this old body, it's just useless, better drop it and get a new one. And so that's what happens, because the physical substance is not able to keep up with the inner development. It needs a more expressive body. Yesterday, that girl, she asked me, why are these people so keen to break the chain of rebirth? Perhaps she'd been with some Buddhists or something. And I said, well, if you think you're just being reborn again and again and again, it's just the same thing over and over, then you might wish to break it and escape from that endless round. But if we understand what Shraddhavan is telling us, that each life is a new opportunity for growth and progress and for the further development of the soul's self-expression, then why would we want to break the chain? We don't want to break the chain. We don't want to escape from this wonderful world which we've chosen. When we chose it, we must have had some inkling of what a wonderful world it is. No? Now, Mother says it's as if we've fallen on our heads and we've forgotten why we came, and we have to manage with the circumstances as we find them. But there is some progress going on. There's some progress going on for each of us and for the whole universe. And every little bit of individual progress that we make helps the progress of the whole. That's what we are here for. So shall we read this section together?
In this slow ascension, he must follow her pace, even from her faint and dim subconscious start. So only can earth's last salvation come. For so only could he know the obscure cause of all that holds us back and baffles God in the jail delivery of the imprisoned soul. Along swift paths of fall, through dangerous gates, he chanced into a grey obscurity, teeming with instincts from the mindless gulfs that pushed to wear a form and win a place. Life here was intimate with death and night, and ate death's food that she might breathe a while. She was their inmate and adopted waif, accepting subconscience. In dumb darkness reign a sojourner, she hoped not any more. There, far away from truth and luminous thought, he saw the original seat, the separate birth of the dethroned, deformed, and suffering power. An unhappy face of falsity made true, a contradiction of our divine birth, indifferent to beauty and to light. Parading, she flaunted her animal disgrace, unhelped by camouflage, brutal and bare. An authentic image recognized and signed of her outcast force, exiled from heaven and hope. Fallen, glorying in the vileness of her state, the grovel of a strength once half divine, the graceless squalor of her beast desires, the staring visage of her ignorance, the naked body of her poverty. Here first she crawled out from her cabin of mud, where she had lain inconscient, rigid, mute. Its narrowness and torpor held her still. A darkness clung to her, uneffaced by light. There neared no touch redeeming from above. The upward look was alien to her sight. Forgotten the fearless Godhead of her walk, renounced was the glory and felicity, the adventure in the dangerous fields of time. Hardly she availed, wallowing, to bear and live.